What's your favorite scary movie? For us, it's the Scream franchise, as we're going to be jumping into Screams 3 and 4 in episode 87 of the podcast. Cue the music. Welcome, everyone, to the Entertainment Buffet podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Prosek.
And I'm your other host, Jessica Kwazz.
And we just had an episode about the first and second Scream, the most considered the top two of the series. And now we're going to jump into the third and fourth installment. So yeah, let's move on. You know, we left off Sydney, Dewey, Gail, and Cotton survived the college attacks from Billy Loomis's mom and Timothy Oliphant's character, and now we don't know how long it's been. I think a year or two they may have mentioned.
Yeah, they're really loose on that timeline for 3, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know if, like, because Sydney's not in college, we don't know if she dropped out. We don't know if she graduated, so it's
it's a loose.
It could be a year, it could be 4.
Like we said, we didn't know what year she was in, and so yeah, it's a little messy. But what we do know, which is very understandably so, after surviving the first 2 movies, is she lives out in the middle of nowhere. She's got an at-home phone job. And she's got a dog, and she's got a security system. She is just, you know, like, look, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on me. But there will not be a fool me 3 times, you know? That's for damn sure.
She is out there. She is smarter and stronger and tougher, even more than the second one. She's just fully like, nah, I'm going to take a break from everything. And yeah, she works as a crisis counselor on the phone for women, which I think is perfect for her. She helps other women go through trauma and go through pain, and I just think that that's like a really nice thing for her to be doing in the third.
Yeah. So one thing to note is Wes Craven came back for this. However,
which is shocking. Like, it just blows my mind he did direct this one.
However, the writer, Kevin Williamson, did not. I believe was working on too many different TV shows and movies. Like, I didn't know he had such a huge writing career until I looked at a lot of the stuff he did. But they had someone by the name of, I'm just going to probably butcher it, but Aaron Kruger, which they've also written things like Transformers, like, I think 3 and 4 or 3, 4, and 5. You know, it's like so. Oh, and they wrote Ghost in the Shell. You know, so it's like they don't have great credits that I see so far. But anyway, they took over the writing. Apparently, much like the second one, there was a lot of like intrigue over like who the killers would be. The second one dealt with like script writing leaks. So the third one, I think they were kind of like not quite rushed, but just like, I think they didn't have like a clear vision, and they knew they just needed to do it because like these have been making money. And right. You can tell.
Yes.
But before we jump in too far, I guess we should continue the trend of talking about the opening scene, which this time it's Cotton who gets a phone call, and his girlfriend and him are the couple that are killed, which this is the first time that it's not just someone, that it's a pre-existing character gets killed. So what were your thoughts on the opening with Cotton, who's on a show now, a TV show, talk show, called 100% Cotton?
I love that show title. That show title
Me
is
too.
really funny.
It's like the best part of the movie.
It's so good. And yeah, he also just filmed his cameo for Stab 3. So that franchise is alive and well, and this franchise as well.
Yes.
So here's the thing. I don't necessarily like Cotton. And it does, to me, make sense that he would be killed off in the third, because his storyline, like, was sort of wrapped up in the second a little bit. At least we got like a nice resolution and some sort of redemption for him. So it does make sense that we didn't need him for much longer, because I don't know how much he could have added to things. But for me, I think the stakes would have been raised even higher is if they had waited for him to die just a little bit. Like, him dying off almost feels like, well, that's way too soon, because I don't know. Like, it's interesting because we talked about how in the first and second one, those immediate deaths really raised the stakes really high. And for this one, for Cotton to die, I felt like there were no stakes. It was like, oh, okay, well, Liev Schreiber came back for a scene. Like, okay, cool. It just, I think it would have been more interesting if, like, the death was, some actress that's in the stab 3 and everyone's like, this isn't related, she sucked, someone just wanted to murder her. But then maybe only the second death is Cotton, and then that's when we start to be like, oh yeah, it could be related. It was just weird. And also, I know this is very of the times, but the killer calls him in a car phone, and I understand, like, that was big technology, and like, sure, utilize a car phone, I'm not here to judge, but I think having like this weird sort of car chase scene, I mean, I say chase loosely because he's trying to rush home to save his girlfriend and he's driving super fast and recklessly, just feels so out of place for Scream. I don't think we needed like this weird car intense scene. Like,
well, the budget has grown, and so I think they thought like, oh well, like, this franchise started with a $15 million budget, went to 25, now it's at 40. So it's like they're clearly, if we put more money into it, and that's where they'll, I'll mention a bit they do later. But yeah, I think they're trying to use the budget, make it more intense, but more actiony. But this is where they introduce something that I really think is one of the biggest flaws of the movie, which is not only is the killer using the voice changer of like the original narrator, but apparently this voice changer has the ability to sound like other people. So at one point the killer's doing the voice of Cotton through the door, so the girlfriend thinks it's Cotton trying to kill her.
Yeah, it's super weird because
what
the
a
voice
magical
box,
device.
right. First of all, we don't even have that technology now, 20 years later, to be able to perfectly mimic a living and dead person's voice. That person also uses Sydney's mom's voice in the box, which is just like, how did you even get that, sir? Like, what? So I hate it because, like you said, like, now I think they did it as a device to be like, wow, it really could be anyone. And like, when they're around, you don't know who you're talking to. Ooh, spooky. But for me, it did the exact opposite, where it felt less important and it felt like, oh, well, now we're just doing anyone over here. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I didn't find it to raise any stakes. I found it to actually be very gimmicky. And I think it was just trying to play into, like, who can you trust? But it's like, well, I know these characters now, though. Like, I know that, like, what's up. So it doesn't really work.
The only thing that I think, I don't want to say I liked, but it was an interesting thought about having Cotton die in the opening, is then as, other deaths kind of happen and Sydney's kind of going crazy in this one, is I think there's some suspicions here and there, some like looks and glances where people think that Sydney's doing this.
Yeah.
Which would be an interesting twist. But obviously we know it's totally not her, from the audience's point of view. So I don't know. I mean, I think the Cotton thing was fine for me. I think it was like they did change up the formula of like, we're going to still open with like a couple dying, but it's actually someone who knows, maybe Liev Schreiber was like, look, I want out of this franchise, just kill me, I'll come back for us, I'm busy, getting bigger roles now, and like I just don't want to have this on the hook to where I have to keep coming back. Could be totally wrong, but so yeah, that's the opening. Sydney's out in the middle of nowhere working under a different name. She's kind of in hiding. Even some people ask Dewey at one point, like, where is she? And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, it seems like it's kind of a big secret where she's hiding, which I'm like, okay, smart, good. You're not just, like, staying in the middle of Woodsboro or wherever where people can find you. They pick up where Gale and Dewey are mad at each other again.
Yes.
Which this is where I really started to get frustrated because I like both these characters, I like both the actors, but the fact that they start them off in conflict again, because Gale's arc in the second movie was she's selfish. She just really wants the story. She even like is an asshole to the camera dude who's like, wait, your other cameraman died? Like, maybe we shouldn't do this. She's like, fuck you, get the story, point and shoot. Then at the end of the movie, he's like, come on, let's shoot. And she's like, Dewey. And she like goes to the hospital with Dewey. She chooses him. Now they disregarded that completely. And like they tried to say an offhanded line like, oh, she just, she couldn't stand the small town life, and so she had to go off and whatever. And I was like, okay, I guess, but like, can we not have a movie where they're in conflict? Like, can they just be together and work together? Because like they've survived this twice now. Like, you think they would learn?
Right.
But no, the writer was just like, all right, well, let's just follow what we did before, have them in conflict again. And I'm like, ugh. Which, hair check on for Courtney Cox. She now has bangs.
Yes. For anyone playing the Gale hairstyle bingo card, we have the short, very, very choppy little bangs look, which I do have to say real quick that when I was younger, I remember seeing those bangs. I didn't see Scream, but I remember seeing photos of her on Scream with those bangs. And I thought they were really cute. So I cut my sister's bangs to look like that one time.
Not yours, but your sister's.
My sister's. Because, I think like sisters just do this thing where at some point someone cuts someone's hair. It's just how it happens. And I cut my sister's hair and I gave her the Gale Weather bangs. And my mom was really mad.
I would imagine so. So, yeah, so as we were mentioning, the Stab franchise is on the 3rd, just like Scream 3. They skipped over Stab 2, apparently. And maybe that's to try to show time passing. Yeah, I kind of was confused because it looked like a lot of the scenes that were happening in Stab 3 were like in Woodsboro. And I'm like, so are they just totally making up what's happening? Because like the first Stab was based on the first movie, but like what is Stab 3 based on? Because like the sets look like Sydney's house and like it looks like Woodsboro, and I'm like, what are you going for here? Like, is it just like you wanted to shoot a movie that looks like the first movie, but it's the third movie? Like, it just one of those things that I'm like, I don't think they put much thought into it.
Yeah, and I think also, too, like, there's weird moments, like you just said, where it's like, we don't really know what they're going for, because we have, like, Randy's character is in Woodsboro in Stab 3. We have someone playing, like, supposed to be Randy, but he's, like, so
but he
are
died
we
in
doing
Scream
the first
2.
one? Yeah, like, what are we doing here? And then, also, we have a very, very, very young baby Emily Mortimer playing, quote-unquote, the new Sydney. So that's really weird, too, because it's like this young actress comes
and
in.
Jenny McCarthy.
Like Miss Anti-Vaxxer herself is here, baby. But they have this weird plot where, like, Emily Mortimer, who we know for beloved roles such as Newsroom, and in this, she adds nothing. Poor girl. She tries her best, but brings nothing to the table. It's not her fault. It's just how it was written. But, like, so there's this weird storyline that she's playing the quote-unquote new Sydney. They have, like, this weird contest to see who's going to play the new Sydney. And it's like, well, what? Like, what happened to the old Sydney? What happened to Tori Spelling playing Sydney? Was she killed off? Or do we just, like, there's not even a line that addresses that, where it's like, Tori Spelling was, like, too busy to do this or something. It was just like, yeah, you're the new Sydney now. Like, what? So, yeah, I don't know, like, what Stab 3 is about. They don't really get into that too much, like, in terms of, like, what the plot is, like, what we're following. If we are just, like, totally making it up now, where we're back in Woodsboro, Stab franchise never left Woodsboro, and some of these characters didn't die, so we're diverting from what it's based on. So, but it's like, that was never explained. And I think the idea of the movie set actually could have worked because it is Scream, and Scream is known for its commentary about movies. Like, I think that it could have worked, but we didn't care about these characters at all. Like, they wanted us to
any
care
of the
about
actors?
none of them. I don't care about any of them.
Even I keep wanting to think it's Elizabeth Berkley, or is that no Elizabeth Banks, but it's Parker Posey. Yeah.
Who is the best? I think. Okay, so I think I do think Parker Posey playing fictional Gale is the best new character in this movie. But other than that, and it's just because Parker Posey's so funny and like so silly and ridiculous that it just is fun to watch her do that. But other than that, it's like we don't sit with these characters long enough to care. So it's not that they're like new characters, because Scream 2 brought in new characters. Scream 4 does too. It's just that these ones we don't get to know as people. We get to know them as like shells of people playing the people we know. So it's like when they start dying, it's like I don't really care because I don't know you. Like I am not invested in you.
They're literally brought in to get killed. And I think that's where it's just like you said, just don't care them at all because like there's no stakes. Like yes, they're deaths, but like at least Cotton was someone who, like you said, redeemed himself at the second one by helping Sydney. These are just people that like it sounds bad, but like as characters they don't really matter. So
yeah, and I think there could have been something where, because Sydney's not with these people much at all. And I think what worked for Scream 1 and 2 was those were people in her inner circle. Those were people she cared about. And
people she was dating or best friends, you know, things like that. Like you said, they're connected. Whereas like this is just actors playing those people from the first movie.
I think there could have been like an alternate idea where Sydney is living a very, very, very low-key life, but she's also a consulting producer or something on Stab 3. So she's getting to know these people that are playing her friends, and she cares about these people now, and they're good people, or something where, like, she's kind of woven in, because what works is it's an ensemble always, but she's our lead of the ensemble, and for this she doesn't join the rest of the characters until halfway through the movie. So it's like this weird ensemble without our leader, and so it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, Gale and Dewey are here, but like they're not Sydney. Like
it felt disjointed. It felt like yes, she would be doing this one thing, they'd be doing this thing, then like Gale and Dewey would split up, and then like it felt very disjointed in this movie. A couple little details I will bring up that I liked. One was the little detail we mentioned before. Sydney's wearing the necklace from J. O'Connell in the previous film. It's like a nice touch. I like that the Stab 3 cast mentions Randy's death, like that crowds hated it. Pretty meta. But the only thing that I could find was commentary besides like, I don't know, like I think they wanted to go for like old wounds thing with like her mom, but like it didn't work, and they tried to do these weird like dream sequences that I don't even want to get fully into because they're just dumb and trash. And it's like none of the other movies did this. This is a weird thing you're trying to intertwine into this universe that just doesn't match up. But the big thing was kind of like a pre-Me Too movement stuff.
Yeah.
Which like Emily Mortimer's character is like, I didn't fuck the director for this shit. You know, it was just like, yee.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. I mean, it is pretty early for the times, I guess, but it's also like weirdly just shoved in there too. So it's like, yikes. I don't know. Yeah, like it is very disjointed because we have so many things happening, mostly to a lot of people we don't care about. So it's like, all right, whatever. And then we have our girl Sydney over there, and she's just like going through this whole thing with a ghost mom that, like, yeah, like you said, it sucks. It's weird. And they're not connected in any way. So, okay. And then halfway through the movie, Sydney comes back because the police want to talk to her. Oh, yeah, and the cop's played by Patrick Dempsey. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
okay, he's here too now.
Which then he's like creepy sometimes.
Yeah.
But then he's like good. I don't know if were they trying to go for the fake out of like the potential love interest being the killer again?
But I thought they were maybe like in an original shooting script, Patrick Dempsey was it. So, and then maybe like at some point they're like, oh, nope, rewrites. And he wasn't. Because it also felt like there are times where he's like really playing it as like a fucking creep. So it's like, were you originally supposed to be the killer and they just shot like your early scenes like you are and now you're not? Like, I don't know what that was about. I don't know. I didn't really care for it too much.
Yeah.
It's, and like, there's something to be said too about like this group of people we have. So for really the first time in the franchise, we have group killings, which is like, okay, so it's like,
don't forget we have our first explosion.
We have our first explosion because it's 2000. So of course we gotta have an explosion.
We need to use that budget.
We got 40 mil, baby, 40 mil. There's a few scenes where it's multiple characters. Dewey and Gale are usually with them, but other than that, we don't know or care about these other characters. It's just like group scenes of people being hunted by Ghostface, and there's something just so less scary and less intense about an entire group of people being hunted by like one person or one Ghostface or maybe two, who knows. It also is just like, I just don't care. Like, okay, 4 of you are running and one person dies. All right, well, 3 of you got out, so who cares? Like, it's just, the stakes feel so much less in the third one. Like, they're so much lower. Things don't really matter. Plus, they also mess with Ghostface's MO, which is like, why would you do that? Like, in the third one, like you said,
an explosion.
He blows up a house. Like, that's not what he's known to do. Like, or what the characters embodying Ghostface are known to do. Like, this is really weird. And so for those reasons too, it also felt disjointed in that it wasn't like the norm for Scream. It was just like, all right, well, you're just doing stuff now. Like, I don't know.
This did take place after like the Columbine incident, and so Wes Craven was really pressured by like ratings in the studios to make it less violent, like even more so than the first two. So that's why I think there's a lot of scenes where they're like not as bloody or like they're, explosion or whatever, because like he could still be violent, but they wanted it to like, apparently they wanted to play up the humor more, which like, I don't know if the humor was played up that much more. So it's, I don't know. I think that's why this is often the most hated one. This is the Mission Impossible 2 of this franchise.
There is an explosion. Yes. And there's chases.
2000.
Yes. 2000, man.
Both these movies.
All it needed was a boat, and we were totally in. Like, ridiculous. It is ridiculous. There is something about that era of movies that is just so weird and dark. Yeah. And like, what were you doing? But like,
yeah, well,
I just hate it. But one thing I really want to touch on real quick is one thing that I really, 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 really loathe about this movie is that at some point, Randy's sister, who we've never heard about nor met, nothing, with no idea he had a sister, no idea he even had a family.
Curious your thoughts on this part.
I hate it. She just comes to the movie set, just shows up, is like, hey girl, I'm here. Okay. It's super strange because supposedly he just so happened to know that he would be murdered in round 2. And the joke is like, oh, it's because he lost his virginity that he's going to die, which like, haha, okay, we did that joke in the first one. Move on.
Yeah.
But he comes back through a tape that his sister brings to Sydney. And it's another one of like the classic like Randy rants about horror and film rules, and now there's
trilogies.
Now there's a trilogy rule. It doesn't feel as fun. It's definitely like his monologues just work so much better because they felt organic, where this does not. It's just like shoehorned in. It's just like shoved on us. And his weird appearance doesn't like add anything either to the movie. Like it could have been completely taken out and it wouldn't have done anything. But
yeah, it doesn't help them solve it. Like it kind of like they try to, like you said, throw out all these rules and these things, and here's this, here's that, and that's it. Like it just, I thought that the idea could have worked if the writing was better. Like, it's like, he would be the guy to film like a will and testament, basically, thinking that it's like, well, this is going to happen a third time or whatever. But it was not handled well.
Well, in the original script, I would have much preferred this. In the original script, it's revealed that he actually survived, and his parents were secretly hiding him because he was kind of being hunted. But it was cut for the final film because it was considered to be too unrealistic, which is like, we have a house exploding in here. Who cares? Like, I don't care if it's ridiculous. All of Scream 3 is ridiculous. Bring him back. And he died off camera. We can play with that. Like, I want him back.
Speaking of unrealistic, let's just get right into it. Let's get into who Ghostface is in this one.
Oh, boy.
Because this is where sometimes with sequels, people try to say, like, oh, the sequel ruined the original. You know, it's like, this was something that actually tried to relate to the first one, that, like, I don't think it ruined it, because it's like, you could just choose in your headcanon to not really follow this one.
Yeah.
You can just say it went Scream 1, 2, 4, you know. The killer's the director of the Stab 3 movie, which is this guy named Roman, who, like, they do a fake, like, they think he's dead. And then does this whole monologue about how Sydney's mom, you know, was in Hollywood for a couple of years. She was a bit of a slut, slept around, you know, and clearly had him. So it's Sydney's half brother. And then left him, gave him up or something. And so then he tracks her down and tries, because she was using a different name, and tries to, you know, be part of her life. And she ushered him away. So then he was apparently the one that, like, went to Billy Loomis and Stu and, like, oh, she's a slut. Like, look, she slept with your dad. And, like, that's what broke up your family. Like, you should kill her. And then, like, in one line, this is great writing, quote unquote, where he's like, I'm a director. I direct. Like,
right. That's why he directed all these murders. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, not only do you make him the villain of this movie, which apparently he did it by himself, they at least moved away from the whole it's two people thing, because, like, that could get repetitive. But the fact that it's him, and the fact that he also had to deal with something in the first movie that, like, also not only the first movie, but would be like the prequel to the first movie, which is what kills Sydney's mom, which is like kickstarts the first one. So it's like, wait, what are you saying? Why are you trying to connect them like this? Like, I think at this time they thought they were gonna try to close off the franchise in a way.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
They wanted to wrap things up, but, like, you didn't need to relate it back to that. It was already related because we've had Sydney this whole time.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to capitalize off of, like, oh, it's Billy's mom. Like in Scream 2, it's like, oh, twist, it comes back. But this does it in such a way that they have to create an entirely new storyline that we've never heard anything about. And it gets even weirder, too. So this is where, like, some Me Too stuff plays in, because it's heavily implied that Roman is the product of Sydney's mother being raped by Milton, who's the executive of the Stab movies. Yeah, so, like, the Milton stuff is weird because he's, like, the head of these movies. He's just, like, this old rich filmmaker.
I think he's supposed to be a Weinstein.
Yes.
Because I think he's involved in some of these movies, right?
Yeah, he is. Yes, he is. So, like, don't tell me y'all didn't know about Weinstein. Y'all knew. Anyway, so it's, like, weird because Milton could have been an interesting villain, but they didn't know what to do with him. So they don't have him in it much. And when, at one point, Gail finds out that Sydney's mom was in his old horror movies, she confronts him about that. And he says how she would go to these parties and stuff would happen, but she really did want it. It's like they never say it, but they heavily imply it. They just don't fully go there. So it is implied that Roman was the product of Sydney's mom being assaulted, and she couldn't deal with that, so she put him up for adoption and was just like, I can't deal with this. So then when he comes back into her life and is like, hi mommy, she's like, oh man, nah, I can't, I'm sorry, bye. And then he gets all upset because he's been abandoned. But like, none of this matters because, first of all, again, this is a whole storyline they just made up and they fed it to us in like 5 minutes right after the quote-unquote twist is revealed. But we don't care about Roman because, first of all, we've hardly seen much of this character at all. And when we have, he just talks about the movie and what the movie's delay means for him and how, like, what his career's about. So we
then he quote unquote died.
Right, and then he quote unquote died, which again also didn't matter because we didn't know anything about him. We didn't care. Seeing him and only having him talk about his career, we don't get a feel for who this guy even is as a person outside of his career. So none of it matters. Like, it just, none of it matters. I wasn't invested in Roman. It's not like I was like, oh, he's a cool dude. And then I was like, oh shit, he's the killer. And it just didn't matter. And I'm sorry to Scott Foley, sorry to this man who played Roman, but like, his acting after the twist is just not up there with the other, like Billy and Stu and Timothy Olyphant's character and Laurie Metcalf. Like, it's just not up there where it's like, I don't even care about this twist. This acting is incredible. I am so here for it. It's like, okay, yeah, you playing a little crazy guy. All right. Like,
for sure.
It's just, it would, like, I think the motivation for him isn't bad in terms of like an interesting motivation, but it's just so shoved in on us that it doesn't feel impactful because we don't know any of this stuff.
To me, I will say it's bad because we've only known Sydney's mom through talking, just exposition. We never met her. We didn't experience her at all. So now that you're just finding all these secrets that like, she was a bit of a slut and she was in a couple bad horror movies, and then she gave up this kid. It's like, I don't get it. Like, why are you trying to make this mom seem so terrible when like we didn't really know what she was like to begin with? We just know she was killed in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it's all about slut shaming. And I just, to me, what would have made more sense, and like, I don't know if this will go maybe in Scream 5 or something, but all these people that have been killed through the first two movies, wouldn't it make more sense if, like, I don't know, I know they did like the parent for 2, but like maybe like just community people from Woodsboro, whether it's like parents or family members of like people who got killed or like were affected by it, because like Woodsboro, the town, had to have been heavily impacted by like the media and whatnot with Sydney's stuff, that it's like, it would have made more sense for kind of like this community of people be like the ghost face, and like they want revenge on Sydney because it's like, hey, you fucked up our life. Like, we've had to live with this. And we'll talk about this more for like 4, but like, I think that would have made more sense opposed to making some random love child that was given up that was related to the first one.
Yeah.
Too much. You it's like the first 2 movies were smart. This one, they're trying to be smart.
Yeah, and it's not this good blend of like horror, cheese, and camp with like actual horrifying things. It's just like you said, like they were trying to make it lighter and funner, but that's not what Scream is about, so get out of here with that. But I also just think it is like just really weird too to think about, like, okay, so Homeboy is the director of this movie. How'd you get this job? Like, did you just hate your mom so much that you had to
got a directing career, or did he find out later and he was already like in Hollywood?
Right. So like, we're supposed to believe that not only did you like murder all or trigger all these murders, but then you went on to direct a movie about it. But like, how'd you get that job? Like, how did you get qualified for that job? Like, what? Like, it's just really weird. And again, it's just like all those weird like ghosty things that pop up with her mom. The purpose of it was to only like add to this twist because now we see more of her. But it's like, I I don't care. I'm like, I don't care about these people. None of these characters, with the exception of Sydney and Dewey and Gail, who we already know, are even likable. So, like, I don't care that you die. Like I said, Parker Posey to me is like my new favorite addition, but it's only because she's so funny playing it. She still is very unlikable. Like, I don't care when her character dies, because it's just like, okay, well, you kind of sucked anyway. But
random cameos from Carrie Fisher and Jay and Silent Bob.
I was gonna say my favorite part of this entire movie is Carrie Fisher's cameo. I think it might be the best part of the whole movie because she's just really funny and playing this like sassy woman who works in the filing basement of this production company. She just doesn't care, and it's always really nice to see Carrie Fisher, I think. Yeah. And it's just, you can tell too, she had fun with this cameo. And it was just like a silly little, like, like a smoking, like, I don't care about anything kind of like Hollywood stereotype that I found to be really fun played by her. And yeah, Jay and Silent Bob pop up, which is like, oh yeah, hey. All right, you're here too. It's so strange. All of it is so strange to me. It truly is.
It's just, there's a reason why this is at the bottom of everyone's list when it comes to the Scream franchise. And there's without a doubt, when we do our ranking soon, it's going to be at the bottom. We both know that for sure. It's more of a matter of 1, 2, and 4 where you rank those. So speaking of 4, let's move on. A lot of people thought Scream 3 was the concluding film. You know, everyone said, like, oh, it's the conclusion of a trilogy. That was in 2000. Decided to revive the series in Scream 4 in 2011. Here we pick up Sydney has written a book, like Out of Darkness, you know, her getting through these killings 3 different times. Gail and Dewey are married, but conflict again, because why can they never be happy? Gail is struggling with small town life because Dewey's the sheriff of Woodsboro now, and she like is struggling to write, and I think she's kind of envious of Sydney having written a book, which is fine, but we get an entire new set of characters which features Sydney's cousin. Right? Sydney's cousin, and then her cousin has like 3 friends, like 3 to 5 like high schoolers. So it's like we're kind of back to Woodsboro, back to some high schoolers. There's some film geeks that are kind of like Randy, like the best friends of Sydney's cousin, who I'm blanking on her name.
Oh, Jill.
Jill. Oh yeah, which is Emma Roberts. Oh my God, I forgot.
Yeah, it's Emma Roberts.
Yeah, Alison Brie's in this. We also have Anthony Anderson and
Adam Brody. Adam Brody. Which I was a really big fan of the OC, so I love Adam Brody so much.
I know you are, but yeah, so that's kind of where the characters pick up. I think they said Sydney is now like 31 or 30, something like that. It's like the 15th anniversary of the original Woodsboro massacre, as they're calling it. And yeah, they kick off this movie where they show the Stab 7 movie. Like, people are watching Stab 7, but it's Stab 6 watching Stab 7.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 scenes.
And then we have characters watching Stab 7 as those characters watch Stab 6. So yeah, it's like 3 scenes of the classic Scream beginning all in one. And I love it. I think it's really entertaining. I think it's really funny. It's really ridiculous. And just plays up that like horror campy cheese that we love about it. And then goes into, all right, now these girls, we actually are from Woodsboro. Because they mentioned something like, you know, it's based on Woodsboro, right? And she's like, yeah, I know, whatever. We live here. We have to hear about it every year. I hate Stab. And it just goes right into the story. I think it's really funny because it's definitely playing on the fact, like, all right, we're a franchise now, and so is Stab. They haven't stopped, but now Stab has become almost like a Saw type where they just call it like
they
gore
make
porn.
fun of Saw.
They make fun of Saw for being gore porn, and It's just, I think it's a really funny and entertaining way to start. And it's also really interesting because it keeps you on your toes too, as like, okay, wait, you just died. Okay, now you've died. Okay, now who's dying? Okay, these people. These are actual people dying. Like, I think it's really fun.
Yeah, no, I think it was a unique opening. Had tons of fake outs because they realized that, we've seen people die in the opening of Screams for the last 3 movies. We're coming back for the first time after 11 years. Like, let's do something different. So they're like, well, here's one opening. Cut to, they're watching that opening. Cut to it's like, okay, I see what you're doing, and I'm curious where they're going to go with this now in the 5th movie. But one of the big things that stuck out for me is wow, the camera differences.
Yes.
The quality in the camera from 2000 to 2011 is insane.
It really is. It's just so much clearer in 2011. Like, you can see every pore, every wrinkle on these people. Whereas if you watch the first one,
all the Botox with Courtney Cox.
I know, but I still love her. I still love Gail. Gail has the best. Gail just has the zingers. She has the best lines. My favorite line from this one is, and this is getting a little head, but I just want to say it because I think it's hilarious because it's just so Gail. And I love Gail so much. But they're talking to these like nerd kids, these film kids, about they're gonna have a stab-a-thon showing, but they won't tell Gail where it's at. And with Gail's iconic sash, she just delivers the line, "So where is this circle jerk anyway?" And I'm like, I love you because you're like a 40-plus-year-old woman talking to 18-year-olds, just making fun of them. And like, you can also tell that Courtney Cox had a lot of fun coming back as Gail. Like, she was really enjoying herself, and I think I really appreciate that. Yeah, I love Gail. I love her so much.
Yeah. So obviously Sydney is dealing with the fact that she's like feeling guilty that this is happening again because her publicist Alison Brie gets killed, and then they're coming after both her cousin Jill and Jill's friends, and like there's a brutal death of Jill's friend. Woof. That one was like one of the, I don't know, that felt like it brought me back to like the first movie with like the gutting stuff.
Are you talking about the closet moment?
No, the fact that the friend who was like next door.
Yeah, the closet where it's like, I'm in the closet.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was thinking that was later, but no, it was that. But it was the fact that like when she like gets like stabbed and whatnot, like it's very bloody, and like you see insides when like Sid finds her, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like they're certainly not getting in trouble for violence this time.
Yeah, no, not this year. Like, who cares anymore? Yeah, I think the deaths are elevated, but also do have callbacks to the originals, which is so interesting. Like, I love the death of her friend who's next door, and they're seeing each other in a window. Hayden Panettiere's character Kirby is on the phone with the new ghost face, and he's like, I'm in the closet, and she's like, no you're not, and then bam, the reveal is he's at the closet next door. And
I didn't say your closet.
I didn't say your closet. And that's so interesting to play with that too, because it still has the tropes of the first two, but then makes it even more brutal and more intense, where these girls have to watch their friend get murdered brutally. It's fascinating. And so Alison Brie's death, I would say in this one, is the one that's like least like anything of the original, in that she like literally gets murdered and then falls onto a news truck. So that's interesting, during a press conference. Yeah, but it still has the iconic phone dialogue, in that she's like, oh, I'm in the hospital, and he's like, are you sure you're not in a parking garage, bitch? Like, just gets her. Like, I love that. So I do love that it was this nice blend throughout of like the old school and the new school, and it's like bringing all that back but in a modern time, and playing around with it more and elevating it even more. Yeah,
so this one, I had zero idea who the killer would be, because this is the only movie from previous ones I hadn't seen until this rewatch.
Okay.
And I was not spoiled. Throughout the movie, I'm just like, man, I have no idea, because there's the one deputy of Dewey that's like a little creepy. There's like thoughts that like who it could be. I thought I'm trying to remember. There was someone else that they kind of was like making it seem like they were creepy.
There was Emma Roberts' boyfriend Trevor, who's like,
Yes.
yeah, he's like, he's supposed to be an asshole. He kind of cheated on her. He's just like, she doesn't trust him, and so we're told like he can't be trusted. So that's kind of set up. Yeah, there's a lot of like interesting red herrings, and it's because it's like also a new cast. We don't know, like we don't know who to trust because we're learning who you all are.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up before we move forward, just because, like, since I hadn't seen the other ones, or I saw the other ones, I knew who the killer would be. I just didn't always remember the motivation. Whereas, like, this time around, I'm like, I straight up have no idea who it is. And, like, you're introducing not only new characters to die, but also new characters that are creepy. So, like, it was interesting to finally watch, like, a Scream movie that I hadn't seen where I'm like, well, I have zero idea who Ghostface is.
I am very interested to talk about the ending with you then, because we'll get there. But yeah, just for going back to the Randy of it all. Like you said, we have this film club. We have these two nerdy boys that run the film club, and they sort of are the spirit of Randy, if you will, in that they talk about movies, and they talk about now this like also new media of like filming everything, and one character's streaming all the time. They talk about how people consume content now, on top of horror movie rules, and all, again, blending the old with the new. What I find to be really interesting is that, I mean, at some point they straight up say like this killer's pretty basic and lame. Like if they were really going to do it big, they would film all these murders. And so that's interesting too. Like I said, bringing this sort of old and new, but also having these two characters plus their entire club embody what we love about Randy's character, and that they're nerds who bring up commentary about movies, and commentary about like violence in movies. So I really like that it's not him. It's like again in the third where they just have a videotape of him shoehorned in there. Okay, these are new fresh characters, but it's still interesting because movie buffs never change, and I think that's something that they encapsulated too, was like there's always nerdy film fans no matter what generation you're in, and now we have these guys.
Yeah, like you said, I think this is what this one was definitely doing some commentary on, and we'll cover it more at the end. I think I have more to say about the end than leading up to it, but like, yeah, I enjoyed that this isn't the 90s anymore. This isn't 2000. Like, there are cell phones, and there is social media, and there is, like, these characters have lived with the Woodsboro murders for 15 years, and also 7 stab movies. And so I think it's, like, totally different. Like, they knew that, like, they couldn't just repeat itself, but they updated it, but also were still paying homage to the original. So like I feel like this Wes Craven, and then and Kevin Williamson came back.
Yeah.
So like same writer director team, and I think you can tell because they brought it back to where like the originals were, where there is comedy, there is meta stuff, self-referential things, horror topics, and just like it felt like this should have been like the third movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice like return to it all while also updating it, like how Scream 2 takes what we love about it and adds on it. This definitely does the same thing, and yeah, it does so in a way where it's respect for the old and also excited by the new. Actually, like it's Gail. Gail just kills it with the lines. Another one of my favorite lines is that Gail's talking to Dewey about how this new Ghostface is operating, and she goes, "No, he's gonna do this, blah 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 blah. It's totally meta." And Dewey goes, "What's meta?" And she goes, "I don't know. I heard one of the kids talking about it." Like, it's just, I love that so much because, like, yeah, Gail doesn't know shit about movies,
and they're both older.
They're both
like,
older.
They don't get what the kids are up to now.
Right. I love that so much, and it's done so in a way that's just like so very them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which if Dewey was 25 in the first one and this is 15 years later, so he would be 40,
yeah.
which is crazy, just to show the four movies, 40 years, or not 40 years, 15 years. Um, yeah, I enjoyed that humor of like she's investigating and trying to understand the horror things and figure it out like the original, but also just like, well, I don't know what meta is, and like like dealing with the fact that like Dewey's an actual cop, and the sheriff, that's where their conflict is, and like I don't know. Um, I think that for a franchise that took an 11-year break, this was one of the better movies to just like pick up where it left off and like improve upon the third one. Like there's no doubt that this is better than the third one.
Oh, absolutely. And like, yeah, Sydney, because she's older, because she can't be like the final girl like she once was, she's still interesting though, because she's not like the main character of this movie, I would say, but she still is sort of the lead of this ensemble, which is also kind of interesting because it's like she's again related in some way to what's happening, and now it's her cousin, so it's like still her family and not her friends but her family's friends. So that works more than like in 3 where it's just like random people that she doesn't really care about, so we don't care about. Like, we care about these people because at the very least they're from Woodsboro and they know the characters we know, so it's like it makes sense. I really do like all the new characters, like as opposed to the third one where I only liked one. Like, I like all of them. I think they're all funny. They bring something new. They're very much fleshed out as their own characters, which makes me care about them.
Yeah. I think in particular Hayden Panettiere, the Kirby, really stuck out to me. I was hoping that she could have been like the lead of a new franchise,
Yeah, she's my favorite. Like, she really is. It's Hayden Panettiere's best role, like, no doubt. Like, she's so good in it. But like you insinuated, she dies. Kirby's death, while it reminded me of Tatum's in that, like, it really bummed me out because I really liked this character, but it also was like, wow, yeah, no, anyone can just get fucking murdered.
It was also a callback to Drew Barrymore's
I was just going to say that, yeah. I love that it's like a heavy callback to the first one as well, where she's inside, she sees the guy that she likes tied up, and she has to answer horror trivia to save his life. And that was a very fun way to bring in like the new kids watching horror. And it was just like a cool callback to the very first moment of the very first movie. But this one, they elevated it more. So Kirby, quote unquote, wins the movie trivia and can go save him. And as she's untying him, she gets a knife to her gut from Charlie, who's played by a Culkin. Which Culkin? I don't remember, but a Culkin that's not on Succession nor in Home Alone. So it's we get a reveal right after probably our
Rory
favorite
Culkin.
Rory Culkin. Okay.
He's the younger brother of Macaulay and Kieran.
Okay. Now I know. There's a lot of Culkins. There's like 5 of them. So I don't know.
There's a lot of Culkins. Yeah. So that moment was like, oh shit, because like the one nerd got killed before that, and so I was like, okay, are both the film nerds gonna get killed? But then like he's tied up and I'm like, oh shit, is he gonna die, and like Kirby will live? It's like, no, Kirby gets killed and he's one of the killers, and I'm like, oh fuck, well, like clearly he's not working alone because someone was on the phone with her. And
right.
like she was looking at him, so I'm like, well, who the fuck is the other person? Because like I thought if it was like both nerds, that would have made sense. But like when the one nerd got killed, I was like, wait, so who's he with? Like, who's he working for? And also why? So I was very, very, very surprised by that. That was a good twist that I did not see coming. But at this point, earlier in the movie, Gail had been stabbed, and then I think Trevor, or no, like they were thinking it was Trevor, like Jill's ex-boyfriend, and so Jill's mom got killed also, and now it's kind of down to like Sydney and Jill. And I don't think Dewey had gotten there yet, or if he did, he was probably knocked out or something. You know, that tends to happen with Dewey. And
again, defund. What? What?
Yep. And this is where they reveal that it's Charlie and Jill.
Yeah. So I want to, because I knew that, but I want to see, like, what was your initial reaction to Jill, and how did you feel about the reveal of it being her?
I mean, I liked it because for the most of the movie, it's like they were grooming her to be like, oh, well, like, she'll be the next generation of Scream movies, and like these are all of her friends. Like, these guys are clearly like the Randy, and here's her friend. But then, like, when the reveal of Charlie being one of the killers, I'm like, wait, who, what, you know? And then when she like, I think she took off the mask, it was like, oh. And I'm like, oh, is she like pissed because like she's had to live with the fact that like Sydney is an infamous person for the last 15 years and like hears nothing about Sydney Prescott, and then she proceeds to monologue about like, you know, like, oh, you know what it's like to live like this, and it's just like, okay, I like this, but then I'm like, but why is the film geek helping? And then he's like, yeah, and then like this time, you know, Sydney gets Randy gets the girl.
Mm-hmm, right, a callback to
and
that.
They like make out for a second, but then she stabs him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait. And she's like, sorry, it's better for like a sole survivor.
Yeah.
And like she stabs Sydney, and it's like, you know, they're teasing the fact that could Sydney die? Oh no. But like the most brutal thing of this whole thing was like when she tries to Gone Girl herself.
Yes.
Where she takes the dead ex-boyfriend's hand and scratches her face, pulls some of her hair out, and then throws herself into glass and like tables and stuff and knocks herself out, and then positions herself next to Sydney like a victim. And then when I realized that there was still a good chunk of movie left, I was like, oh, are we gonna figure this out? Because like this is the first time that it hasn't ended with like Sydney shooting the villain, you know. But I'm like, clearly they have to figure it out at the hospital, you know. Cut to Dewey talking to her, and she's like, oh, you know, Gail and I have the same wound, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, girl just gave herself up.
Yeah, and I love that too, because then Gail is the only one who gets a hunch about Jill. So Dewey communicates that to her, like, oh, she's so sweet, she even asked about how your wound was, she's got the same one. And Gail's like, hold up, how did she know that? And it's like Gail who's like, it's her. It's her.
I like as soon as she asked that though, like Dewey's just like, what, you know, and they run after. There's a pretty good action sequence in the hospital room. You know, some a fight between Sydney, Jill, and then Gail comes in, and Dewey, and the other cop. I'm forgetting her name. And yeah, I the whole ending where she kind of talks about how like media loves like a survivor, and like how she'll be a hero, and how this is how like she'll be remembered, is for like saving this thing. And she like, who needs friends when you have fame, you know?
That's my favorite line. I don't need friends, I need fans. Like, damn, because it's like, yeah, not only was her motivation that she was just sick of living in Sydney's shadow, but she wanted some of Sydney's glory and fame. Like, she wanted to, like, she literally says like, now I'm gonna be the special one. Like,
for sure.
And that's more horrifying than just like, I'm sick of Sydney. It's like, I can get rid of Sydney, who I loathe, and then I can get famous, I can get book deals, I can get TV show spots, and that's horrifying. And I think that really works with, again,
she's like I even had to kill my mom,
right? But like, she's no less there. Like, okay, whoa, like she is doing all this to get famous, to get rich, to like have fans. And I think that that's a very horrifying thing, and a modern horror, if you will, that they've brought in, is that, yeah, she doesn't really care about the people close to her. She wants what Sydney's got, which is fame and being the
Yeah.
survivor. And that's more horrifying, to set yourself up as like this innocent victim. And it's so interesting too, like you were saying, where she is setting herself up to be the innocent victim and doing all these things, because we have seen her be this cute little innocent girl who, like you said, was primed to be the new Sydney, and now all of a sudden we get the reveal that she's that. But then we get our old school stab from Scream 1, where it's like Billy and Stewie, where they're stabbing each other, only she takes it a step further and kills the guy. And then we're watching her do these really intense things to her own body. So it's like this quick twist, and then it's like, oh shit, you are nutso. Like, I get it. Like, oh my God. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I'm not like the biggest Emma Roberts fan in the world, but I think she's wonderful in this. And she takes it to where, like, Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard took it, to where Timothy Olyphant took it, where she just goes for it and she gets crazy. And so you're like, oh shit, this bitch is wild. She sucks.
Yeah.
And then I do like as well that when we bring it back into the hospital, we have not only Sydney facing her, but we have Dewey and Gale there too. So it's like this really fun scene. It's like the old school type of fight, but with a new and younger and more resilient character. So watching that dynamic of like the old and the new literally fighting was really exciting.
So I think that's the only thing that I will admit. So, like, I love the ending with the commentary, the twist. I think that was all really well handled, because the third one really didn't have much commentary.
No.
First two definitely did. This one definitely did, which I think is what makes Scream great. But I will admit, I think the one thing that kind of bugged me at the end was being at the fourth one. I feel like either Dewey or Gale should have died.
No. Absolutely not.
Because to me, now that they've survived this long, it's like, well, we know they'll always survive. And like you said, they really got to make characters that we care about, but they killed them all. You know, they killed Hayden Panettiere. They made Jill the villain. They killed the film guys. You know, like the only person who didn't die was like the deputy, but like she was kind of creepy and also possibly wanting to have an affair with Dewey, you know. So it just... I don't know. If they do a fifth one, if they survive, they really got to make me care about the other people, so that if these three survive again, you know, it's like, well, you know, we're going to set up maybe a new crew or whatever it may be. But like, I really thought that, like, maybe to me it's because they've repeated Gale and Dewey's story constantly with the whole they have conflict and they come back together, that either they better not do that again or one of them has to die. That's just, I don't know. I feel like, because like then those three are just always bulletproof, which to me then you can't keep pulling that they get stabbed, but they're fine, you know, because it's happened now to one of them every movie.
Yeah, I just think, like, for me, like I was saying, when I was so upset that Randy died, it's because if it feels like part of the soul of the franchise died a little bit with him. And that, like, again, this was someone that Sydney was friends with. This was someone who's been there and knows what's going on. And so I do like that Dewey and Gale have that as well, where it's not just Sydney. Sydney's not the only one surviving. There's two other people that were involved. So it's like, again, like seeing our friends come back and they're doing all right. Great. You've been through trauma. I don't know. I love Gale so much. Like Dewey, all right. I could see getting rid of him. But Gale is like, she is so underrated in that, like, she is the one out here pressing these to be solved right away, trying to get this like fixed, trying to figure this out. Like, she's on top of this in a way that most of the characters aren't, because the other characters are just trying to survive, while Gale's out here trying to thrive. Like, she is my girl. I do not want Gale to die at all.
Okay, well, good news. I was just looking up about Hayden Panettiere's character. So apparently Wes Craven in commentary thinks that we technically didn't show her dead.
Right.
So she could be a survivor, which that makes me a little bit more comfortable, because then they've at least created a character we liked that can come back for 5 or 6 or however many they end up doing, which at that point Stab will be on like the 12th movie.
Right.
But overall, I think 4 is great. Not just like better than 3. I think it's great. So now that we've seen and talked about all 4, do you have your final ranking for this franchise?
I do. It really hasn't changed much at all over the years, and it didn't change this rewatching. From best to worst, favorite to least favorite. Mine is Scream 1. We got 2, 4, 3. 3 is the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 is clearly the bottom for me. I think then 4, which isn't like, I don't want to say that it's bad because it's third, but it's just, it's had to deal with being a fourth in a franchise. It's hard.
Yeah. And it's great, but it just doesn't have that magic of the first 2. I don't know if any of them ever will.
Which, it's a real toss-up for 1 and 2 for me. I feel like if you ask me today, I'll say one of them. If you ask me tomorrow, I'll say the other one. Mm-hmm. So right now, as we're recording this, and Halloween of 2020, I'm gonna say that the first one is second, and then number 2 is my number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think that because I really enjoyed the commentary of 2, both about violence in movies, parents being blamed for violence. They had to deal with sequels by making fun of sequels. Like, sure, they made mistakes, but I also feel like the first one, rewatching it, you can really tell that Billy is creepy and involved in some way, and also kind of Stu. That's saying that having known the twist, but 2, they don't give it away as easily.
Right, they don't.
You can really pick apart little things, but for the most part, it's not obvious. It could have been Cotton. It could have been Derek. It could have been, Timothy Olyphant or Laurie Metcalf. And I know that they struggled with that for the second one because apparently twists were leaked online. So I think they did change it once or twice. I think there was going to be some involvement with maybe like the cameraman being one of the killers. They tried to really, spice it up with the killer reveal. So that's kind of affected the rest of the franchises having to be super, super secretive about who Ghostface is. So I think right now for me, it would be 3, 4, 1, 2. Or excuse me, 3, 4, 1, 2. But like I said, 1 and 2, those are probably like the 2 I really want to own on DVD and I really want to rewatch more. But I could see arguments for both sides for those being the best.
Yeah, same. I mean, I love 1 just because I love it. But that doesn't mean like quality wise it's the best. It's just my personal preference. It can totally be 1 or 2 interchanged. I totally agree. So I know we're kind of wrapping things up right now, but I did take some notes about 5, just like really basic shit about like what we know so far. So I would like to just touch on that.
Sure.
Well, so this is it. Okay, so this is not the end of the road here, buds. We got, I don't know why I said that's so weird. We got possibly another favorite scary movie coming down the pipeline, and that is Scream 5. So this was announced, and they were actually about to start shooting right before COVID hit, and they had to pause everything, which actually is now supposedly delaying it till at least 2022. So that kind of sucks, but everything's delayed. It's just how it is. They did just get back into shooting right now, and they are doing it safely, I believe, in Canada. So they're on track. Wonderful. And so we'll just have to wait and see, like everything else. So unfortunately, Wes Craven passed away in 2015, so we have to get a new director. And we do not have Kevin Williamson back as a writer, but there is some promise, so hold on, don't worry. So for the writer, we have Guy Busick, who wrote Ready or Not, which was a wonderful horror film that just came out. He's one of the writers on Scream 5. And then we have a second one, which was like, I don't know. We have James Vanderbilt, who, first of all, has never done a horror. So that's Huh. And his other titles are really interesting. So, Brandon, did you know that the same person who wrote the script for David Fincher's Zodiac is also the same person who wrote the scripts for Amazing Spider-Man 1, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Independence Day Resurgence?
Yeah, that's one thing that's very interesting about some writers' careers when you look at their filmography. I mean, one of the guys who helped create Game of Thrones, who it was good in the beginning, also wrote like X-Men Origins, so Wolverine. So you definitely can notice that some writers, especially, they probably got like hired to make a movie, and then also the director can take it from there and go with whatever. So it's hard to know what's the writer's blame and what's the director's blame, because directors have final say,
Right.
and then sometimes studios have final say over the director. So sometimes it's like fourth removed for the writer. So I'm not quite super worried, because I mean Zodiac is great, but the directors are also the people who made Ready or Not, right?
Yeah, so we have a directing duo signed on, and it's Tyler Gillett and Matt Bellatini Olpin, I think. I don't know. And yeah, they directed Ready or Not, and they also directed lesser known horrors that are wonderful, Southbound and VHS. So they are super promising. Ready or Not, I think, is a great horror comedy, and it has in the vein of Scream. So I think that that's incredibly promising to have these two directing. And we got our major players. We got our Sydney, we got our Gail, we got our Dewey. They are returning. And also, very weirdly, too, to join our original three, we have, her name is Deputy Judy Hicks, and she's the weird deputy in season 4, in Scream 4. So she's back. I guess we were all really concerned about her character and needed to know more. Okay, so we got her. There is no talk about Kirby. I would love Kirby to come back. I hope it's like for where the story may not directly revolve around them, but they're still like big players. The last thing I would want is just to bring our three originals back and just like have a scene and then pop out. Like I want them just as much, if not more, like still there. So
Yeah.
we'll see about that. And then we have our brand new cast, and we got some interesting people in there. So first of all, it was just announced that Jack Quaid from The Boys is going to be in it, which I like. It screams, so I don't know how excited to get for that, because I remember when 4 announced that Adam Brody was going to have him in there, and I was like super pumped for him. And then the movie's released, and he's just like this like small character cop who dies, so like
Yeah.
who knows. And then we also have Dylan Midnight. I don't know how you say his name. He's the kid from 13 Reasons Why, and that's a successful show with the youths. And then we have Jenny Ortega, who is in You, and she's also in another horror comedy, The Babysitter 2. So I think those are really cool. So we're bringing some like young, fresh blood for the Gen Zers of the world to get behind. And I'm very curious about what the story is going to be and how it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm very curious too. I heard that Kevin Williamson's going to be kind of like an executive producer. So, I mean, I'm just going to be cautiously optimistic, with the new team, because it seems like, one of the writers and the directing duo and the original cast coming back. So, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that it'll be good, and they can continue on. And I don't know how much more of the franchise that they can string out of this, especially with just Sydney's character. But, it'll be interesting. I'm optimistic.
I am too. I think we've learned a lesson from 4. And I think the biggest thing is that we've kind of learned it's best to keep it in Woodsboro, because it's Woodsboro. We love it there. And it hasn't been like explicitly said, like it's definitely going to take place in Woodsboro, but some of the like on-set photos that have been up definitely look like Woodsboro. So that's what I want it back in Woodsboro. That's what I care about the most.
Yeah. Well, Um, I'm really glad that we decided to take this journey right after the Mission Impossible franchise for Halloween, the journey for the Scream franchise, since I'd only seen most of these movies once and one of them not even at all. So I was pleasantly surprised. I want to rewatch most of them again fairly soon, maybe not right away, but yeah. Any closing thoughts as we're recapping the four and then also just looking forward to five?
Um, I just love these movies. They're so rad. They're so fun. And I love Gail. I just love her so much. I truly do. That's all I gotta say, really. That's
All
it.
right, guys. Well, what's your ranking of the Scream movies? Let us know. And what's another franchise you want us to take a journey on with you? Please reach out to us on social media and let us know.